I have some notes because of what I want to talk about the Mayflower today, but frankly, my grandparents gave me a handwritten document, a copy of it, and it was actually a priest from the family that had documented our tracing back that part of the family to the Mayflower. And what he had was our relationship to Edward Doughty, which was one of the signers of the Mayflower Compact.
Right.
And what I found out later when I did some more research on my own was not only am I a descendant of Doughty, but I'm also a descendant of William Brewster and the pilot, John Clark, who piloted the ship, and about 9 others. So, you know, which kind of makes sense back then with the colony being where it's at. There weren't a whole lot of people around, so they kind of married each other. So that's why when you're a descendant of one, there's a really good chance you'll be a descendant of several. But there were at least 10 of the Mayflower people that I'm a descendant of. Now, what I want to talk to you today about, and I want to get the dates straight, so I put the dates on my notes, was the voyage over. Because what we can see when you walk in the Spirit is how God was with the Mayflower. It was his intent to get them over here. And like I said last night when I spoke about that the King of England wanted to destroy all the separatists. He wanted to squash the whole movement. He didn't want any separatists around at all, and he wanted them, frankly, he wanted them dead. And he put them in prison, and they were brought to trial, and they finally, some of them escaped to the Netherlands. And William Brewster was one. William Brewster was the assistant pastor. Robertson was the main pastor of the group that went to Holland.
Amen.
Now, like I shared last night, they managed to send some people to England secretly, and they found a gentleman, a religious man, who believed in their cause, who was part of the Church of England, who also had a friend that was the Secretary of State to the king. And there was a private meeting. And like I said last night, God changed the heart of the king at that meeting. And the Secretary of State and this other gentleman asked the king privately, will you let these people go from the Netherlands to America and have a settlement there where they can worship God like they see fit, but they can still be part of England? And the king went ahead and said yes.
Oh, right.
That is a miracle if you consider it at all. Now, they made plans. They had a ship that they owned all together. It was the Speedwell. And
I'll say something.
Yes.
There's a proverb that says that the king's heart is like a river.
Right. I read that last night. And the Lord changes it however he wanted it changed. And he wanted those people, those separatists, to go to America.
Is that incredible?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right,
I mean, the Secretary of State. That's all right. They had a ship, the Speedwell. So the people that were in the Netherlands got on the Speedwell in July of 1620. And they took the ship to England, where they were going to meet another ship that they had rented. Now, the people, the separatists, together were very poor people. They didn't have a lot of money. Now, William Brewster had some, but frankly, he had given most of it away trying to keep these people up, to keep these people alive. He helped everybody he could. He gave them money for food, clothes, everything. So William Brewster's money was deteriorating, and what he had back in England, they took when he escaped. So they took the Speedwell to England, and they were going to meet the Mayflower. They made a pact with a company because they had no money to start this colony in America. So they made a pact. Bradford was hired, and he helped to work out the pact between this company and the Pilgrims. What they said was they were going to go to America, and everything that they made and everything that they built was going to be owned by this company. They were going to be indentured to the company for 7 years. And the company would then pay their way to America. And they were going to pay that back with things to trade with fur and fish and anything that they could make in America. So they made the pact. They got to England, and they met with the Mayflower. Well, on the way to England, the Speedwell leaked. So when they got to England, they had to patch the speed well. Well, that took about a week and a half. So they got that patched. So now they're taking off. They take off at I think it was August 9th. They take off in August. They're headed for America. They don't get very far, and the speed well starts leaking again. So they turn around, they go back, they fix the speed well again. Now they got it. Now they got the speed well fixed. Now they take off again. And I believe this time it was late August. They take off. Now they got the Mayflower and the Speedwell. Now they head for America. They get 300 miles out, and the Speedwell starts leaking again. So they had to turn around and go 300 miles back. At this point, they're frustrated with the Speedwell because they can't seem to get it fixed. So they make a decision. They're going to leave the Speedwell. They were going to use the Speedwell for the Pilgrims themselves because the Mayflower is going to drop them off and go back. But they made the decision they can't take the Speedwell. So now you've got people that have been on the ship for a month and a half already, living on the ship. They bring back the Speedwell. So now they realize that not all the passengers can go. There were a lot of them that said, look, we don't like all the trouble that we're seeing. We don't like all the problems. And they left. They went back home. So now there's a group of 102. That's a crowded ship on the Mayflower. Doyle has seen the Mayflower. It is not a big ship. Not a big ship at all. So they got 102 pilgrims. They've got about 25 to 30 crew members. They've got all the food and all the stuff that they had to bring from the Speedwell. So it's a crowded ship. Now, you only got to take what was necessary. A couple of your clothes, not all of them. No furniture, nothing. Only the food, only the things necessary to get to America. They finally take off September 9th. 66 days there at sea. Now, on the way there, there's some interesting things that happened to this Mayflower. Now, you say, how can this be God with all these troubles on this voyage? Have you ever read in Acts about Paul's voyage to Rome? Jesus said, you've got to go to Rome, Paul. He went, but he had trouble on the way. A lot of trouble.
Amen.
A lot of trouble. Well, the Pilgrims were the same. First off, they had a man on the ship, a boatswain. I think that's how you pronounce it, a boatswain?
A boatman?
Yeah, boatswain, yeah. He was in charge of the basic hull of the ship and the equipment. Well, he hated the Pilgrims, and he let it be known. And he would cuss and swear at them because he knew it made him upset. He swore at them. He threatened them. He threatened to throw them overboard. I mean, he was one mean individual. And you know, the leaders of the Mayflower, the leaders of the separatists, the Pilgrims, was what they called themselves. I think Bradford was the first one that called him a pilgrim. The Pilgrims warned him. They said, you know, you better leave us alone. All we want to do is obey God. You better leave us alone. Well, he wouldn't leave them alone. He wouldn't. They told him several times, you better back off. Well, you know what? The man got sick. Guess who took care of him? The Pilgrims. Guess what happened to him? He died. He died. And the Pilgrims told him, you know, you're not doing the right thing. You're not, they warned him. Well, he died. Well, the ship was going fine until about October. That's why they didn't want to leave so late, because of the storms. Well, they ended up in a number of storms in October, a number of them. In fact, a couple of them got so bad that they had to take the sails down and they had to let the ship go adrift because they couldn't take the chance that some of the beams would break. But you know, one of the storms, the beam did break. One of the main beams of the Mayflower broke. Now, it looked like they were going to lose the ship. It looked like they were going to lose the ship. You know what the Pilgrims were doing? They were in the hall praying. They were in the hall and they were praying. They had a spare beam in the hull of the ship and they brought up, but they could not get that beam to attach to the one that was cracked. They couldn't until, lo and behold, one of the Pilgrims brought up from his supplies that he brought a giant iron screw. Nobody really knows why one of the Pilgrims had a giant iron screw. Some of them thought maybe they were for a printing press, but there wasn't room for a printing press to go to the New World. There wasn't. Some of them thought they brought it because they were going to build houses there. They thought that's probably the only reason they had it. But he had, by the grace and mercy of God, he had a giant iron screw, and they were able, with that screw, to screw the new beam under the old cracked beam, and the ship remained okay. Now, oh, the devil doesn't like that. I bind you, witchcraft.
Amen.
Now, when they got to the New World, they found that because of the storms, that they were just a couple degrees off, but that sent them into north of where they wanted to go. They really wanted to go to about the Hudson River. That was north of the Virginia, north of Jamestown, and that's where their plan was to settle. But the storms blew them north more, around Massachusetts. Now, when they got there, they saw land November 9th in the morning when they woke up. They saw the Cape. But by November 11th, they landed. Now, they didn't land where they settled. They landed at the Cape. And they decided that they were going to try to head south so that they could get to the Hudson River. But you know what? That's not where God wanted them. They took off and they tried to head south, and they almost shipwrecked. They ran into harsh seas and they had to turn around. And they finally decided, you know what? We can't go south. Not now. So they decided to head north, and they headed toward the Cape. And they went around the Cape and they went into the harbor, into the Boston Harbor, which is called now, and they spent a month and a half trying to find the right place to land. And on December 25th, Christmas, they'd already been on the ship since September. They decided where they were going to land, and they put the boat down, and that's where they started building. Tomorrow, if we do this again, I will tell you why they decided there, that they decided on the west side of the Cape of the Boston Harbor, and that's what they called Plymouth, and that's where they landed, and that's where they started building.